In my past life, after an unplanned pregnancy led to a shotgun wedding with my boyfriend, I discovered my mother-in-law was already 5 months pregnant. My mother-in-law excitedly grabbed my hand and said, "Once both babies are born, we'll register them under your name. It'll be a companion for the one in your belly." I frowned, unwilling to agree. My mother-in-law was in poor health, and my father-in-law was a heavy smoker. The doctor advised against them having this child. I glanced at my silent husband, then said through gritted teeth, "Mom, you should really consider terminating this pregnancy. Your health isn't good, and if something were to happen, you have to think about us, your son and daughter-in-law." My mother-in-law burst into tears immediately. "Fine, after slaving away my whole life, now I need permission from others just to have my own child." My usually mild-mannered husband slapped me across the face and snapped, "What's one more mouth to feed? Why can't you just lend a hand?" I argued back fiercely with them, and as a result, my mother-in-law suffered a threatened miscarriage and lost the baby. My mother-in-law woke up crying and screaming that she wanted to die, and in a fit of rage, my father-in-law pushed me down the stairs. I died giving birth to twins, but my husband lied to cover for his parents, claiming I had fallen accidentally. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day we were to get our marriage license. Without hesitation, I booked myself in for the procedure. "One, Mimim, it's time we went in. Let's get the certificate early so we can surprise Mom and Dad." Chen Ziming's voice rang out from above, jolting me back to my senses, cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. The dread of staring death in the face lingered in my heart, refusing to fade. I remained silent for a long while. Chen Ziming, standing before me, furrowed his brow. A flicker of irritation passed swiftly through his eyes before he finally spoke in a gentle tone. "Minmin, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell anywhere?" He reached out to feel my forehead, but I instinctively slapped his hand away, not wanting him to touch me. Chen Ziming's smile froze, and the impatience in his eyes became much more apparent. He suppressed his anger and asked, "What on earth is wrong with you?" "What's wrong with me? I want you dead." I gritted my teeth, watching Chen Ziming barely contain his impatience before me. The hatred in my heart was a seething tide, threatening to burst from my chest. In my past life, if it weren't for the unplanned pregnancy that led me to marry Chen Ziming on this very day, I wouldn't have met such a tragic end. Innocently slaughtered, my life and my unborn child's both lost. My mother-in-law, having a child at her advanced age, still expected me to raise the baby, who was destined to be sickly. No one in their right mind would agree to such a situation. I merely offered a bit more advice from my own perspective, politely declining my mother-in-law's request for me to help raise the children. To my surprise, my mother-in-law immediately started crying and making a scene. Chen Ziming, who had just registered our marriage, stayed silent when I was trying to think about our future together, but the moment he saw his mother's tears, he suddenly became the model filial son. He, who was usually so gentle, not only slapped me but also had the nerve to lecture me without understanding my position. "What's the difference in raising a few more, as the daughter-in-law? What's the big deal about helping out? My mom raised me with so much effort and love, and this is her one wish now. How could I, as her son, possibly go against her on this?" "Lin Min, when did you become so selfish?" He lashed out in a fit of rage, his expression so unfamiliar it was almost unrecognizable. "I'm an orphan and have never experienced the warmth of a home since childhood." When Chen Ziming found out, he held me in his arms, heartbroken, and said that from then on we would be a family. He promised to build a warm little home for us, but after we got our marriage certificate, I never saw the things he had promised. Instead, I experienced how his family, knowing I had no one to turn to, took advantage and bullied me without restraint. I refused to back down, because giving in once would mean having to give in countless times in the future. I argued with him and his parents, the red mark of a slap still visible on my face. "No wonder you waited until after we got married to introduce me to your parents. If I'd known they were having another kid, I never would have agreed to marry you." During the argument, the mother-in-law became so agitated that it disturbed the fetus. My father-in-law quickly called an ambulance, but my mother-in-law's pregnancy was already unstable, and even after going to the hospital, they couldn't save the baby. My mother-in-law woke up crying and screaming that she wanted to die, and in a fit of rage, my father-in-law pushed me down the stairs. I died carrying our child, but my husband lied to his parents about the real cause of my death, claiming I had accidentally fallen from a height. Within 2 years, Chen Ziming remarried and had a child with his new wife. My grief-stricken mother-in-law gradually shifted her focus to her grandson and slowly moved on. They all moved on happily with their new lives, completely forgetting about me, without a shred of remorse. I will never forget the feeling of lying helpless on the ground, waiting for death with no one to save me. I clenched my fist, fighting the urge to slap Chen Ziming across the face. Both Chen Ziming and I have respectable jobs. There's nothing to gain for me if I were to hit him without a good reason, even if I have to cut all ties with him and let him reap what he's sown. I'll choose a way that works in my favor. I took a deep breath and reached up to rub my temples. I had a nightmare last night and didn't sleep well. I even forgot my ID card. Let's talk about getting the certificate some other time too. As soon as I finished speaking, Chen Ziming's expression darkened instantly, but the next instant, he pulled himself together, forcing a smile as he asked me, Minmin, are you kidding me? How could you possibly, on such an important day? His mood shifts quickly, but a closer look reveals his underlying agitation. I can't help but wonder, how could I not have seen it before? I took out my phone and replied, I'm serious, I really forgot to bring it. Something came up last minute. Let's stay in touch by phone. I just came back to life, and I really don't want to see Chen Ziming. One more second of looking at him, and I'm afraid I won't be able to stop myself from taking action. I turned to leave, but Chen Ziming suddenly grabbed my arm. He frowned, his tone tinged with unmistakable irritation. What could possibly be more important on a day like this? Getting back to grab your ID and getting married, that's what matters most. Perhaps he thinks that now that I'm carrying his child, I have no choice but to marry him. Chen Ziming can no longer hide his true feelings when he speaks. My gaze turned cold, but when I looked back at him, my expression was filled with suspicion and confusion. Why are you in such a hurry all of a sudden? It's like you're afraid I won't marry you. In the heat of our argument last time, I didn't have a moment to think, but now, with a clear head, I'm recalling so many details I overlooked. I'm 2 months behind my future mother-in-law in my pregnancy. How is it possible that I got pregnant unexpectedly just after she found out she was? How could such a coincidence even happen in the world? Chen Ziming seemed taken aback by my question. Unconsciously, he glanced away, his eyes betraying a hint of guilt. Clearing his throat lightly, he began to explain, I'm just thinking that since the baby's getting bigger by the day, we should get married sooner rather than later, so people won't gossip when the baby is born. He spoke with genuine sincerity, as if he truly had the child's best interests at heart, but his shifty eyes gave away the lie. My heart sank. I was right. The thought that I ended up in that situation because Chen Ziming set me up makes me furious. I bit my tongue and informed him after giving it some thought. Marriage is a big step. I think we should meet your parents first. Chen Ziming looked surprised, then frowned. I already told you, he said. My parents are on a trip. Who knows when they'll be back? Liar, I sneered inwardly. His parents were clearly at home the whole time. The only reason Chen Ziming would say that was because he was afraid I'd find out his mother was pregnant. Once we're married, you'll feel entitled to demand that I support your mother's child in the future. Now that the marriage certificate hasn't been issued, they're doing everything they can to stop me from seeing my mother-in-law. Looks like he knows his family's affairs are disgraceful, and understands that if others found out, no one would want to marry him. After Chen Ziming finished speaking, he studied my expression and added, Minmin, just listen to me. Let's get married first. It doesn't matter when we meet the parents. I turned around and told him straight, I'm in no rush. Let's wait until your parents get back and meet them first. I walked away without a second thought, my gaze catching Chen Ziming's dark and agitated face in the side mirror of a nearby car. Seeing him in such a foul mood made me feel much better. On the ride home, I took out my phone and decisively scheduled the surgery for myself. 3. The surgery is scheduled for the day after tomorrow. I turned off my phone and stared at my slightly flat stomach, feeling a fleeting moment of daze and tenderness, but only for a moment. I quickly pushed down the thought that maybe having the baby would be okay. I can't afford to be soft-hearted. I don't want to have too many ties to Chen Ziming because of this child in the future. I also can't guarantee that I could both earn a living and take care of him all by myself. I placed a hand on my stomach. Sometimes, choosing not to bring a child into this world is its own form of kindness. Everyone's energy is finite. Since we didn't become mother and child in our past life, perhaps in this one, we should simply go our separate ways and seek our own new beginnings. Back at home, I was just about to sit down and rest when I received a video call from Chen Ziming. Muttering, what lousy timing, under my breath, I hit the answer button. Chen Ziming's face suddenly appeared on my phone screen, his expression brimming with excitement as he told me, Minmin, I've got great news. My parents are back from their trip, and they said they'd like to meet you. We're packing up now and we'll be at your place in about an hour. Could you prepare some light dishes? My parents can't handle anything too greasy, and they don't eat meat. Alright, that's it. Love you. See you soon. He hung up the video call right after he finished speaking. I glanced at the time. It was only 11 o'clock. Chen Ziming hurriedly called his parents over for dinner just to put on a show, hoping to persuade me into going with him to get our marriage certificate that afternoon. I pouted. What a nice thought. I pulled out my phone, opened the food delivery app, and ordered 6 or 7 vegetarian dishes in one go. Then, thinking of my future mother-in-law, I added a special dish just for her. By the time Chen Ziming and his family arrived, I had just finished setting all the vegetarian dishes on the table. I walked over and opened the door, and my mother-in-law immediately smiled and took my hand. "You must be Minmin," she said, just as Ziming described. "You're clearly a wonderful girl." She's a bit plump and has a warm, welcoming smile. Any outsider would definitely think I've got great taste, marrying into such a wonderful family. Who would have known that the mother-in-law in front of me, who was over 50, was already 5 months pregnant? Her warm smile was just a trick to rush me into marrying her son. I clenched my teeth, recalling the first time I met my mother-in-law in my previous life. She had grabbed my hand with the same fervor. She said, "Once both kids are born, I'll register them under your name, so the one in your belly won't be alone." He tricked me into marriage and then dumped the child on me to raise. No matter how many times I think back on it, it just makes me sick. Thankfully, I'm not part of their family anymore. I pushed her hand away and forced a smile. "You guys go ahead and sit down. I'll just grab the last dish." Mother-in-law kept saying it looked wonderful. Father-in-law remained silent, while Chen Ziming quietly breathed a sigh of relief at the sight of the table full of light dishes. Noticing his expression, I chuckled to myself and headed into the kitchen. As he brought out the final dish, Chen Ziming looked up and asked with a smile, "What kind of dish is this? It's even covered." "Of course, it's a great dish." I placed the dish right in the center, then lifted the lid. Instantly, the greasy aroma filled the dining table as an enormous portion of braised pork belly was unveiled. Chen Ziming's smile froze on his face, and his father-in-law's expression also shifted slightly. The reaction from the mother-in-law seated at the table was the most intense. Her face turned pale, and she immediately turned away, bending over as if to retch. For father-in-law went over with a dark expression and gently patted mother-in-law's back, while Chen Ziming slammed the table and stood up. "Lin Min, what is the meaning of this? I already told you that mom and dad can't eat meat, they need light, bland food, and you still went ahead and served this kind of dish." Chen Ziming looked angry on the surface, but his eyes betrayed a hint of panic. Afraid of being discovered, I shot back without hesitation. "Why don't you blame yourself for not making it clear? I thought they just couldn't eat it. How was I supposed to know? Even smelling it was off limits." Mother-in-law's face turned pale, and she kept dry heaving. Chen Ziming quickly covered the braised pork again, but his mother-in-law's condition still didn't improve. I chuckled inwardly to myself. In my previous life, the moment I had the marriage certificate and stepped into their home, they immediately told me about my mother-in-law's pregnancy and laid down a whole list of rules for me. For example, my mother-in-law is unwell and pregnant, so it's really tough on her, and I end up having to take care of all the household chores. For example, my mother-in-law has severe morning sickness, so the meals at home need to be light and bland. At the time, I found those words utterly ridiculous, so infuriated that I couldn't even bring myself to laugh. Now it's her turn to feel that sickening anger. Seeing the family of 3 flustered and at a loss, I let out a sigh of relief, but the matter wasn't over yet. I pulled out my phone, calling for an ambulance while scolding Chen Ziming. "Auntie is vomiting this badly. It must be a stomach or intestinal issue. As her son, haven't you taken her to see a doctor yet?" Seeing me on the phone, Chen Ziming turned pale and reached out to snatch it from my hand. "Lin Min, why did you call an ambulance? Mom's fine. She just can't stand the smell of meat. It'll pass in a bit." I dodged his move and shot back at him with a cold expression. "What do you mean it'll be fine in a bit, Chen Ziming? You're an adult, how can you not understand that minor illnesses can turn serious if left untreated? She's your own mother, and you treat her like that. How can I trust you enough to marry you? The ambulance will be here soon. If you keep talking like an ungrateful child, don't blame me for losing my temper." Chen Ziming opened his mouth, desperate to speak, but the words wouldn't come. The elderly woman spoke up then, her voice frail. My stomach." She was unwell, her stomach churning violently with a dull, persistent ache. I know how much she wanted to have this baby. She was clearly frightened now, clutching her father-in-law's sleeve tightly and refusing to let go. Chen Ziming didn't notice this. He turned to his father and said, "Dad, why don't you take mom home first? You know how her health has always been. She'll be fine after some rest at home." The father-in-law, who had been silent until now, suddenly slapped him hard across the face upon hearing this, glaring as he scolded, "Your mother is vomiting this badly, and you want her to go home? What's the use of raising you? In the end, you're worse than a stranger." The father-in-law was determined to wait for the ambulance. A bright red handprint quickly bloomed on Chen Ziming's cheek. He was lost in thought for a moment, his eyes briefly clouding over. I pretended to look at my mother-in-law with concern, but inwardly, I was over the moon. Finally, I could breathe a sigh of relief. Chen Ziming couldn't refute his father-in-law's words and could only wait quietly for the ambulance. The ambulance arrived in no time after the grandmother was carried onto the stretcher clutching her stomach. The grandfather followed her out of the house. I was about to step forward to follow when Chen Ziming blocked my path. He gripped my shoulders and told me seriously, Mimim, since you're pregnant, don't go to the hospital. My parents and I will take care of my mom. You just rest at home. Next time I'll take you home for dinner, and we can talk about getting married while we're at 5. At a time like this, you're still thinking about tricking me into marriage. He really never gives up on his wicked intentions. I was originally planning to follow and expose their family, but seeing Chen Ziming's wary look, as if he was afraid I'd discover something by tagging along, I suddenly changed my mind. I nodded. All right, you'd better hurry. His expression instantly relaxed, and a smile appeared on his face. I'll head out first. He turned and quickly walked out the door. I gauged the timing and followed. A few minutes later, without me around, Chen Ziming let his guard down. After the ambulance arrived at the hospital, my mother-in-law was immediately taken to the ward. By the time I reached the ward, the doctor was inside, helplessly trying to persuade my mother-in-law. As I mentioned last time, given your health condition and the instability of this pregnancy, continuing as an advanced maternal age patient poses significant risks. To put it bluntly, the child might not be born very healthy. The old lady, who had been smiling like a flower in front of me just moments ago, suddenly snapped at the words. Is this how your hospital treats elderly pregnant women? Watch out, I'll sue you for discrimination, and besides, whether my child is healthy or not is not up to you to decide. If you keep spouting nonsense, I'm filing a complaint. In the hospital room, the father-in-law remained silent, while Chen Ziming's expression grew increasingly grim. A person's involuntary expressions never lie. Chen Ziming's expression clearly showed his resistance to his mother-in-law giving birth to this child, yet he remained completely silent. I stared intently at his face, and the moment the doctor stepped out, Chen Ziming spotted me immediately. His pupils suddenly narrowed and his face turned deathly pale. In an instant, my future in-laws spotted me too, and their expressions shifted slightly. I didn't go in. Standing outside the door, I said, I rushed over because I was worried something might have happened to you all, and now I find out you've been lying to me. Chen Ziming, I want to break up with you. As soon as I finished speaking, I turned to leave. Chen Ziming scrambled up from his chair and rushed over in a few quick steps to grab my arm. Minmin, listen to me. You're pregnant now. Breaking up isn't a game. You need to calm down. I forcefully shook off his hand and shouted, how can I possibly calm down? You're about to marry me, and now your mother is pregnant and planning to keep the baby at a time like this. Don't you see how absurd this is? There were quite a few people in the hallway, and they all turned to look at me in surprise when they heard what I said. Dozens of eyes landed on Chen Ziming's face. The veins on his temples throbbed violently, his face flushed crimson, and he couldn't bring himself to glance toward the crowd. He tried to pull me aside. Minmin, let's talk in the ward. No need to argue here. Feeling embarrassed and don't want people pointing fingers. No way. In my previous life, after my mother-in-law was taken to the hospital, I was also shocked and terrified, filled with immense guilt. My father-in-law yelling at me was one thing, but my mother-in-law sobbing and threatening to kill herself was too much. After all, no matter how you look at it, it was because of their argument that they lost the baby. But what right does Chen Ziming have to accuse me, to curse me? It was clearly him who tricked me into marrying, forcing me into this fight. And he's the one who most doesn't want my mother-in-law to give birth to the child in her womb. With the child gone, he's the one who benefits the most, yet he put on the act of a filial son, crying and publicly calling me heartless and cruel in front of the onlookers. 6. At the time, some people said that the mother-in-law's pregnancy at this moment really showed a lack of consideration for her son and daughter-in-law, but my mother-in-law was being rushed to the hospital at the time. She looked so pitiful, and Chen Ziming kept bringing up my supposed lack of filial piety, causing people around me to whisper and cast judgmental glances my way. They say Chen Ziming, as a son, is willing to support his own brother, so who am I, as a daughter-in-law, to stand in the way and make a fuss? Some people also said that even if I didn't want my mother-in-law to have another child, I shouldn't have argued with her like that. It's all my fault now. But before I married Chen Ziming, I was full of hope and really wanted to build a good life with him. He deceived me, hurt me, and shattered all my hopes. He didn't hesitate to scheme against me, so why should I spare him any face? I shoved him hard and then slapped him across the face. I'm the one making a scene. Chen Ziming, do you have the guts to tell everyone here exactly what's been going on in your family? The onlookers stood at a cautious distance, whispering and pointing in Chen Ziming's direction. Look at how guilty this young man looks. He must have done something wrong. Didn't you just hear? this young man's mother is pregnant and plans to keep the baby, and the two of them were about to get married. What a terrible fate. Chen Ziming's face was twisted by my slap, and as he heard the murmurs around him, his expression turned pale and livid, an utterly fascinating sight. He turned around, fists clenched, and roared at me as if he'd reached his breaking point. Lin Min, will you ever stop? What does my mom being pregnant have to do with us? I shot back at him. What do you mean it's not related? Were you deaf when the doctor was speaking just now? Your mom's not in good health, so any child we have won't be healthy either. In that case, why are you rushing to marry me? Don't you just want me to take care of your mom and the rest of your family later? Chen Ziming, this is marriage fraud. We don't need to get our marriage certificate after all. My voice carries so well that you can hear me all the way down the hall. A collective gasp went through the crowd, and the looks directed at Chen Ziming were thick with contempt. A real man wouldn't do something like this, with our family situation being what it is. It's practically tricking the girl into jumping into a fire pit. Chen Ziming was completely humiliated, and the look in his eyes could have killed me, but the fact remains that he tried to trick me into marriage, and he can't explain it at all. I covered my face, squeezed out a couple of tears, and pretended to be utterly heartbroken. In the hospital room, the mother-in-law, as if she could bear it no longer, began to wail at the top of her lungs. It's this old woman who ruined her own son. I'll go and die right now, so I won't be in the way of my future daughter-in-law. It's just a pity for the child in my belly, to have such a vicious sister-in-law. The mother-in-law had only cried out a couple of times before the father-in-law pushed open the ward door and stepped out. He shot me a dark look, his tone reproachful. That's enough. What do you think you're doing, making a scene in the hospital? I thought you were sensible, but turns out you're just a troublemaker too. What's the big deal about your mother-in-law being pregnant? Even if the baby is born, it's not like it'll be eating your food or drinking your resources. My father-in-law spoke in a furious tone, acting as if I were overthinking things. But when my mother-in-law in my previous life told me to raise the child and love it as my own, he didn't utter a single word of protest. I wiped my tears and shot back. Anyone can talk a good game. You and Auntie are both in your 50s, not in the best health and not earning much. If you turn around and say you're too old to help with the kids, guess who ends up suffering? Me. 7. You hid such important information, trying to trick me into marriage. I won't believe a single word your family says from now on. The auntie beside her whispered in agreement. Exactly. If they're like this before the wedding, once the girl marries into their family, she'll have to do whatever they say. My father-in-law probably never expected his own words to backfire. Furious, he pointed a finger at me while clutching his chest with his other hand. You homewrecker. It was Chen Ziming who schemed against me, but it was my father-in-law who pushed me down the stairs, killing both me and my unborn child. I let out a cold snort. Serves you right if you drop dead from anger. Oh, don't say that. I don't deserve that title. I'm not part of the Chen family yet, actually. Let me correct that, I never will be part of the Chen family. Chen Ziming was patting his father's back to calm him down. Hearing this, he froze, then looked up at me in disbelief. Lin Min, have you lost your mind? You're really breaking up with me. Chen Ziming let go of his father-in-law's arm, ran a hand through his hair, and said angrily, his face flushed with embarrassment, will you stop making a scene? You're carrying my child. Who else are you going to marry if not me? I spoke calmly. I can choose to terminate the pregnancy and not get married. Chen Ziming stared at me in shock, then murmured after a long pause, this is our first child. How could you even think of? With reddened eyes, I cut him off and told him, Chen Ziming, it's your choice, your mother's child or your own child. Which one will you support? Chen Ziming looked at me hesitantly, and once my father-in-law had caught his breath, he promptly gave him a slap on the back. What are you hesitating for? That's your own mother lying in that hospital bed. She's an orphan with no one in the world, and she's carrying your child. What other choice does she have but to marry you? She's blackmailing you, plain and simple. Chen Ziming's hesitant expression instantly hardened, and he said coldly, Lin Min, let me make this clear, that's my mother in there. Threatening me with the baby in your belly won't work. I wasn't the least bit surprised by his answer. He's always been so concerned with saving face. I asked him, so you're choosing your mother, is that right? Chen Ziming seemed convinced I was just making a scene and nodded with certainty. Yes, of course I choose my mother. I rubbed my eyes and said, fine, let's just call it quits. Then, after I finished speaking, I turned away, my gaze turning cold. Chen Ziming, I hope you remember the choice you made today. You were the one who didn't want the child. The crowd behind them chattered with condemnation toward Chen Ziming's family. Chen Ziming stood where he was, watching me leave with a cold gaze. not following after me. 8. The baby was saved thanks to the timely arrival of the ambulance, but the fetal condition remains unstable. She spent a day in the hospital, and Chen Ziming also took time off at his father's request to stay and care for her. Chen Ziming seemed to be deliberately giving me the cold shoulder, as he only sent me a message a full day later. Lin Min, come on, that's enough, we're not kids anymore. Marriage is a serious matter, you can't just call it off on a whim. As for my parents, they're insisting on keeping the baby. I can't talk them out of it. Please try to understand my position. If you're really unhappy about it, we can try to talk them around together after we get married. My mom's getting on in years, and honestly, I just don't want anything to happen to her. I read the text message and couldn't help but laugh out loud. You're still not giving up at a time like this. That's a masterstroke of calculation. The trouble that should have been his to sort out somehow turned into something I had to fix because I was upset. He doesn't have to lift a finger. He'll just sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. I didn't respond, got up, and walked into the operating room. It was several hours before I came to in the ward. I managed to drink some water, then checked my phone and realized Chen Ziming had sent 2 more messages while I was in surgery. Lin Min, what do you mean by not replying to my messages? The baby's due date is getting closer. What exactly do you gain by keeping this up? The entire Chen Ziming family believes I'll compromise for the sake of the child I'm carrying. I'm now certain that the pregnancy was absolutely no accident, but it was too long ago. I have no evidence whatsoever. None of that matters anymore. Though, I ran a hand over my flat stomach and smiled, my face pale. Anyway, the child is already gone. No matter how hard Chen Ziming tries to scheme, it's all for nothing. I blocked Chen Ziming on WeChat and his calls, and stayed in the hospital to focus on recovering. But Chen Ziming called me using someone else's phone. He said angrily on the other end of the phone, Lin Min, I've already explained everything to you properly. Why can't you just try to understand my position? You blocked my calls and WeChat, refusing to talk. Do you really expect me to show up at your door begging for forgiveness just a few hours out of surgery? And hearing his voice now is utterly revolting and tiresome. I frowned and said coldly, Chen Ziming, I thought we made things perfectly clear that day. We've already broken up, so please stop contacting me. Chen Ziming fell silent on the other end of the line for a few seconds, and I faintly heard my mother-in-law's voice. I remember she was already over 3 months pregnant. How could she possibly bear to let the child be born a bastard? No sooner had she finished speaking than Chen Ziming began to talk. Lin Min, I urge you to think more about the child. I let out a soft chuckle. No need to think it over. I never intended for it to grow up without a father. Before I could even finish, Chen Ziming cut in eagerly. So you forgive me? Where are you? I'll come get you right now, and we can get married immediately. I replied, that won't be necessary. I'm at the hospital. I've already terminated the pregnancy. Someone as irresponsible as you, who didn't even want it, doesn't deserve to be its father. Without waiting for his response, I hung up the phone. The knot in my chest finally came undone. I couldn't see the expressions on Chen Ziming and his family's faces at that moment, but for the next few hours, one unfamiliar number after another kept calling, without a moment's pause. Judging by the situation, their reactions should be quite entertaining. I stopped paying attention to them and silenced my phone. 9. After hours of trying with no answer, Chen Ziming slammed his fist into the wall. His eyes were bloodshot. His mother, standing beside him, remarked dismissively, you believe her when she says she got rid of the baby. She's definitely lying to you. She might just be sitting there waiting for you to beg her. As she spoke, Mrs. Chen sipped the herbal tonic meant to prevent miscarriage. Mr. Chen snorted coldly and said nothing. Chen Ziming stared irritably at his phone, then suddenly couldn't hold back and snapped at his mom. Mom, would you please stop? Just look at me. Who's to blame for the state I'm in, if it weren't for his mother's blunder? Why would Lin Min be making such a scene with him? She was all set to marry him, but now, with things like this, who knows what's going to happen? To be honest, Chen Ziming also felt that Lin Min wouldn't have the heart to go through with an abortion. After all, Lin Min grew up starved for affection. People like that are the most tender-hearted, but for some reason, he was terribly anxious, always feeling like things were unfolding off track from his plan. Chen Ziming had originally planned to trick Lin Min into marrying him first. By the time they got the marriage certificate, even if Lin Min regretted it later, it would be too late. The Chen family's assets are limited, so if Lin Min prioritizes her child's interests, she's bound to clash with her in-laws. If there are a few more clashes, that damn baby definitely won't make it. By then, he'd be free of worries, enjoying family life with his wife and kids by the warm Kong, and wouldn't have to bear the shame of having urged his own mother to have an abortion. Chen Ziming has great ideas, but why doesn't reality match what he imagined? Fuming with anger, He didn't even notice his dad's face quickly darken. His mother was startled by the shout, and as soon as she realized what had happened, she began to wipe away her tears. Fine, it's all my fault. I'm the one who caused the rift between you and your future daughter-in-law. I deserve to die. Chen Ziming finally snapped back to reality, his brow furrowing in irritation. Seeing this, his father stood up and slapped him without a word, scolding, "You're the one who couldn't smooth things over. Don't blame your mother for it." Chen Ziming clenched his fists, gritting his teeth in silence. His father shot him a glare and said, "That girl seems easy enough to win over. She's just in a huff right now. Go find her in a couple of days and apologize. It'll be fine." Chen Ziming hung his head, his father's words of affirmation only deepening the unease in his heart. 10 On the day I was discharged from the hospital and returned home, I saw Chen Ziming standing at my doorstep, holding a bag of fruit. Upon seeing me, Chen Ziming immediately straightened up, offered the fruit, and spoke with a deferential tone. "Minmin, I've come by to see you several times. Where have you been these past few days?" His eyes were bloodshot, and his tone was tentative as he spoke. I shot him a glance and muttered something annoyed. "They say after an abortion, of course you should rest and recover at the hospital." Chen Ziming's pupils contracted sharply, and in disbelief, he reached out to grab my arm. "Minmin, you're joking, right? There's no way you actually." I stepped back to dodge his move while sending a message to security to hurry over. I laughed at him. "Why not, Chen Ziming? Don't forget, it was you who said at the hospital that you would raise your mother's child. You were the one who didn't want this child in the first place. How can you blame me for being heartless?" Every word I said was a reminder to Chen Ziming of the choice he made back then. Chen Ziming stared at me with bloodshot eyes, still refusing to believe. "No way, you can't be." Hearing footsteps on the stairwell and knowing the security guard was coming up, I just went ahead and said everything I'd been wanting to say. "If you don't believe it, you can go to the hospital to verify." "Chen Ziming, I'm telling you for the last time, from the moment you decided to trick me into marriage, there was never going to be a future between us. Don't blame me for being harsh. You can ask any family with a daughter of marriageable age in the neighborhood, what girl would be willing to step into a marriage and immediately start raising her mother-in-law's child? Your parents are getting on in years. How is that any different from asking someone to come in and be a stepmother?" The two security guards took their positions beside me. I took one last look at Chen Ziming, drew a deep breath, and said to him, "Let's leave it at that. Don't come looking for me anymore." Chen Ziming finally realized I wasn't joking. With bloodshot eyes, he said reluctantly, "Minmin, don't be so heartless to me. We can start all over again." Hearing such words really makes one feel sick. His talk of a fresh start was just a ploy to lead me down the same old, disastrous path. I had security escort him out immediately and banned him from ever entering the complex to see me again. Chen Ziming was dragged away, yelling and screaming. I didn't so much as glance back, walking straight into my home. 11 My life gradually settled down, but the Chen family was in chaos. The day I argued with Chen Ziming's family at the hospital, a small internet celebrity happened to post a rant online. That internet celebrity filmed the whole thing, including the moment when Chen's father suggested Chen Ziming apologize to me and make up. She came up with a sensational headline, "Future mother-in-law pregnant. Scumbag hid the truth to marry his girlfriend." The video got incredibly high views, even though she blurred all of us. Someone in the comments still managed to dig up information about Chen Ziming's family. The Chen family became the talk of the town, drawing whispers and pointed stares whenever they stepped outside. Feeling ashamed, Mrs. Chen stayed home every day, quietly tending to her own affairs. Chen's father wasn't bothered at all. He thought the nasty insults were just people with nothing better to do. He didn't think his family was in the wrong and confidently went to a matchmaker to find Chen Ziming a partner willing to accept their circumstances. To his surprise, the matchmaker got up right after hearing him out and kicked him out of the house, shouting insults like madman repeatedly. The Chen family is notoriously disliked, and girls from nearby families who are being considered for marriage now all make a point of avoiding their house every day. Chen Ziming's superiors feared he would negatively impact the company, so they fired him outright. Driven to the brink of a breakdown, Chen Ziming reportedly flew into a rage upon returning home, demanding his mother abort the child. His father punched him right then and there, yelling at him for not speaking up sooner if he was so against it. The father and son brawled violently in the house. When Mrs. Chen tried to intervene, she was accidentally struck, and the pregnancy was lost, just like in her previous life. When Mrs. Chen regained consciousness, she wept and screamed, threatening to end her own life. And no amount of comfort could reach her. After being discharged and returning home, she would even constantly curse Chen's father and Chen Ziming, blaming them for killing her child. Father and son faced subtle disdain while working to earn a living by day, only to come home to endure Mother Chen's negativity each night. At first things were okay, but over time, the three of them started fighting constantly at home, leaving the house in chaos every single day. After a period of turmoil, Chen Ziming completely broke down one night. He turned on the gas. By the time neighbors noticed something was wrong and called the police, all three of them were already dead. After the news spread, the little influencer who had originally posted the rant sent me a private message. "Sis, you're still young. Keep looking ahead." I smiled and said, "Thanks, of course I'll keep looking ahead, because I'm absolutely certain my future is bright." The end. That's all for the first story. Don't go anywhere. The next one is even better. After donating a kidney to my daughter, I developed uremia. A decade of dialysis, with a monthly cost of 6,000 yuan, forced their daughter to work non-stop, never daring to pause for a moment. Later, when she got married, the crushing weight of mortgage and car loans left both her and her husband gasping for air. Every day was filled with dread, terrified that even the slightest change could cause their already precarious home to collapse. It wasn't until their daughter, married for 6 years, was confirmed pregnant and wanted to terminate it for her mother's sake, that her long-suffering husband finally snapped. "For your mother's sake, we've lived through 6 years of hell, and now you want to get rid of the child we've waited so long for. Lin Xiao, what do you take me and our baby for?" Their daughter clutched her husband's hand, tears falling onto the prenatal test report. "I'm torn in two. Between my own child and my mother, it feels like I'm being ripped apart. Honey, tell me, what should I do?" The dumplings on the table, which my daughter loves, had long gone cold. Seeing my daughter's temples already streaked with gray at just 30, I knew my time had come. 01. The dumplings were reheated and brought back to the table. I mustered all my strength to keep my weak hands from trembling. "Enough arguing, let's eat first. Eat, eat, eat. That's all you ever think about." The son-in-law shot to his feet and flipped the dining table over with one hand. Dumplings scattered across the floor as plates shattered with a piercing crash. "This family is falling apart. How can you even think about eating? We're done. We might as well starve." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard it shook the family portrait off the wall, sending it crashing to the floor in pieces. This photo was taken at a studio the year after our daughter got married. Back then, the groom was dressed in a sharp suit, and the bride wore a pristine white dress. I was sitting in the middle, with the two of them on either side, supporting my shoulders. The photographer kept guiding. "Auntie, smile wider. Yes, perfect. 3, 2, 1, say cheese." Her daughter's tears finally spilled over. She wiped up the mess on the floor while choking back tears, trying to comfort me. "Mom, Haifeng didn't mean it like that. He's just under a lot of pressure. Please don't take it to heart." I watched her hunched back. All these years, my daughter has been working before dawn at a breakfast diner, rushing to clean office buildings at noon, and then working as a housekeeper in the evenings. Once, when I was hospitalized with a fever, she didn't sleep for 3 straight days, working during the day and keeping vigil by my bedside at night. My daughter is only 30, yet strands of white already streak her temples. I took a tissue from my pocket, cupped her face in my hands, and gently wiped away her tears. "Mom knows everything. Haifeng is such a good son. All these years, I've been a burden to him because of my illness. I'm not a burden," my daughter cried, rushing over to throw her arms around me. She buried her face in my chest, her shoulders shaking uncontrollably. "Mom, it's actually me who's burdened you. If you hadn't donated your kidney to save me back then, I would have died." Her brittle hair brushed against my face, and my nose stung with sudden emotion. "Xiao Xiao, there isn't a mother in this world who would willingly watch her daughter lie in a hospital bed waiting to die." My daughter looked up at me with tear-filled eyes. "Mom, don't overthink it. You're all I have left. You can't leave me." That line felt all too familiar. After being diagnosed with uremia, it's not like I never thought about ending it all. I thought about hanging myself. I thought about drowning once. I even wrote a farewell letter and hid it under my pillow. But that day, when my daughter came home from work, she brought me dumplings she had made herself. She watched me eat and said softly, "Mom, if you leave, I won't have a mom anymore." My husband passed away early, and for over 20 years, it's just been my daughter and me, relying on each other. That night, under the moonlight, I read and reread the suicide note before finally tearing it to shreds. My daughter kept me here, time and time again. But now, my daughter is about to become a mother herself. A few days ago, after her prenatal checkup, she came back holding the ultrasound report. The doctor says the baby is perfectly healthy. In that moment, I saw the fear hidden deep in her eyes. This family already has one too many mouths to feed. There's no room for another life. So, this useless mother of yours won't hold you back from becoming a mother yourself. I gently brushed her graying temples, trying to keep my voice steady. "Silly girl, Your mom won't do anything foolish, but anything done for a daughter could never be foolish, including death too. I've started making arrangements for my own passing again. Keep the funeral simple and frugal, but the ashes must be taken back to my hometown, so I can be buried beside my partner. The phrase I hear most often is leaves return to their roots. That barren earth and the small grave mound are my roots, and there's the courtyard back home, with a jujube tree planted by her father the year our daughter was born. The jujube tree grew up alongside my daughter. Every summer, she would knock the dates down with a stick under its branches, her laughter carrying far into the distance after I'm gone. Whether to sell the house or keep it is entirely up to my daughter, but the most important thing is the money. I pulled out the old mooncake tin from under the bed. Inside was the money I had secretly saved over the years, collecting bottles and cardboard behind my daughter's back. That makes a total of 8,643.20 yuan. Setting aside 500 a year for my grandson's New Year's money should just about see him through to adulthood. By then, he'll be off to college. I gaze out the window. I really wish I could see whether my grandson takes after his father-in-law more or his daughter more. In the following days, my daughter came home later and later, her face growing more weary with each passing evening. Mom, I'm not eating anymore. I'm just going to bed. Before the warmed meal could even reach the table, she had already slipped into her room, head bowed. I wanted to call out to her, to tell her to take a break if she's tired, not to push herself so hard, but my lips merely trembled a few times, and in the end, no sound came out. In this family, I am the least qualified person to say those words. I sat down in the chair just as my son-in-law, who had been out delivering food late into the night, came back through the door. He shot me a glance and tossed a few red bills onto the table in front of me. Take the bus to your dialysis appointment tomorrow. No one's driving you. He paused mid-step, as if he had more to say, but only let out a dismissive humph before heading into the bathroom. The loud slam of the door startled me, and I looked down at the half-finished layered cloth sole in my hands. Ever since my daughter got pregnant, she's been complaining about her swollen feet, saying store-bought shoes are too uncomfortable. I wanted to make her a few pairs of shoes before I left, but my eyesight is getting worse, and my hands won't stop shaking. After several days of work, I'd only managed to sew these crooked, uneven stitches into the sole. Yes, I am no longer the mother my daughter can rely on, the one who lifts her up and helps her move forward. I am the heavy burden weighing her down, making every step a struggle, leaving her battered and broken. How dare I even dream of living on? I pushed myself up on my legs, intending to go to the kitchen, take out that bowl of millet porridge that had been kept warm on the stove, and put it back in the fridge. No sense in letting it go to waste, but a lump of air seemed stuck in his chest, and after taking just a few steps forward, he spat out a mouthful of blood. As I lay on the ground, I thought, I've gone and made more trouble for my daughter again. 03 When I woke again, I was lying in a hospital bed. My daughter threw the diagnosis report in front of me, her eyes puffy and red. Mom, what on earth are you trying to do? The doctor said you missed your first 2 dialysis sessions. What did you do with the money? Don't you realize you could die if you don't get treatment? I grasped her hand, desperately weaving a web of lies. Xiao, it's just that after all these years of dialysis, I feel like it hasn't really made a difference. Mom, she cut in, her voice thick with exhaustion. I'm exhausted. Can you please stop being so impulsive? Can you give me a little less to worry about? The son-in-law rushed over from the corner. If you really want to die, go find a quiet place to do it. Don't make a scene here. My daughter quickly stopped him. Haifeng, how can you say that? Was I wrong? Because of her, you even lost your job. My son-in-law's voice echoed through the hospital room. I was stunned, staring blankly at my daughter. What's going on? The daughter tried to stop him, but the son-in-law had already blurted out. She was pregnant, running you to the hospital every day, and her energy just couldn't keep up. She made a huge mistake at work. The boss fired her on the spot. She hasn't been showing up for work at all these days. He pointed at the worn, faded coat his daughter was wearing. She's handing out flyers at shopping malls and working odd jobs at restaurants, just to scrape together enough for your dialysis next month. I froze, staring at my daughter's evasive gaze and her hands, noticeably rougher than before. No wonder she's been coming home so late lately, always smelling of cooking oil and dust. The daughter grabbed her son-in-law and shoved him out. Shut up, get out. Don't say things like that in front of Mom. Why can't we say it? How much longer are we going to keep hiding it, this family? The ward door slammed shut, cutting off the son-in-law's unfinished words, but unable to silence the muffled argument echoing from outside. She's my mom. What else could I do? Just watch her die. What about us? What about our child? This family is going to fall apart. Xiao, we can't take it anymore. I can't take this anymore. If things keep going like this, we'll have to get a divorce. My son-in-law's voice was filled with the same heavy anguish and despair. The sound of their argument gradually faded, as if muffled by something I stared at. The thin crack in the ceiling. Suddenly I remembered the year my daughter was 6 and hospitalized with a high fever. Night after night, I didn't dare close my eyes, wiping her burning forehead and hands over and over, with only one thought in my heart: I'd do anything as long as my child gets better. The door opened softly, pulling me from my thoughts. I wiped my tears and looked toward the door, only to be met by the unexpected sight of 2 familiar faces I hadn't seen in so long. It was my cousin and sister-in-law from back home. They were carrying a fruit basket, their faces wearing that awkward, hesitant look of someone who has something to say but can't quite bring themselves to say it. When I first got sick, they all urged me to keep fighting, saying, "Shu Hua, don't give up. As long as you're alive, there's hope." But now, after they'd gone on and on about the grandson should be starting elementary school, and my son has a girlfriend and is planning to get married, my sister-in-law suddenly grabbed my hand. "Shu Hua, maybe you should just stop the treatment, give up." For the hospital room fell deathly silent. My sister-in-law fidgeted, wringing her hands and avoiding my gaze. My cousin leaned forward, her voice parched. "Shu Hua, don't blame me for speaking bluntly. We've lived our whole lives. We can't just think of ourselves. We have to consider those who come after us. Xiao has her whole life ahead of her." She paused, then continued, "We're family, after all. We can't just stand by and watch you suffer. But lending you this money for treatment is tough on us too. We all have kids in school and elderly parents to support. Things are tight as it is. Yet, not helping you out, it just doesn't sit right with us. It's..." Before the sentence was finished, the hospital room door swung open. Her daughter stood in the doorway, pale as a ghost. She pointed toward the door, her eyes red-rimmed and alarming. "Get out, all of you, just get out. I don't need your fake concern here." Sister-in-law hurriedly stood up. Xiao, we're doing this for your own good, for my own good." The daughter's tears spilled over, her voice sharp. "Is this what you call doing what's best for me? Driving my mom to her death? Get out, all of you, just get out." She shoved her cousin and sister-in-law out of the room in a frenzy, then slammed the door shut. She slid down against the door and sat on the floor, burying her face in her arms, her thin shoulders shaking violently. Watching my daughter's figure crumble, my heart ached as if it were being suffocated. I reached out my hand to her. "Xiao, don't do this." She didn't look up. "We're all still family. When you run into trouble down the line, you'll need people to help you out. Moreover, they're telling the truth." My daughter froze. She looked up at me, her eyes blurred with tears. A long silence filled the hospital room. Then, she suddenly walked to my bedside and pressed her face tightly against my abdomen, just like the little girl from years ago who would run home for comfort after being wronged outside. With great effort, I raised my hand and stroked the long hair down her back. After a long pause, she hesitantly called out to me, "Mom." I cut her off before she could finish her sentence. "Xiao, Mom's craving dumplings. The 3 delicacy ones you make are Mom's favorite." Her daughter stiffened, then lifted her head, a flicker of hope shining in her puffy, tear-filled eyes. "Mom, wait for me. I'm coming home to make it right now. It'll be quick, just wait." She frantically wiped her tears away with the back of her hand, stood up, and stumbled slightly. "You stay put and rest. I'll be right back." She tucked the blanket snugly around me and gave me one last, deep look. Then he turned and jogged out of the ward. I listened as her hurried footsteps faded away down the hall, then slowly turned my head to look out the window. At some unnoticed moment, a fine snow had begun to fall. Silently, I averted my gaze and removed the oxygen mask from my face. The frigid air rushed into my lungs, making me cough twice from the discomfort, and leaving a smear of blood in my palm. I wiped my face roughly, then pulled the sleeping pills I'd hidden earlier from my pocket and shoved countless tablets into my mouth. The pill went down with blood and saliva, and after dry retching, only bitterness remained. Strength drained from my body bit by bit, and my vision started to blur. The heart monitor emitted a piercing alarm. I could no longer open my eyes. The last thing I saw before consciousness faded was the bright red calendar on the white wall. So, today is the winter solstice. What a pity. I never got to taste that bowl of steaming hot 3 delicacy dumplings my daughter made. 5. By the time Lin Xiao got home, dusk was already falling. Pushing the door open, she found the house quiet and dark, with no lights on. She remembered how, no matter how late she worked, I would always be waiting for her on the sofa. The moment she opened the door, he was there to take her heavy coat, then turned to the kitchen to bring out the meal he'd kept warm. Her eyes stung again. Without turning on the main light, Lin Xiao felt her way through the dark and walked straight into the kitchen. She tied on that faded blue cloth apron and began kneading the dough and mixing the filling. She knew all the ingredients for the 3 delicacy filling: shrimp, would ear mushrooms, eggs, and chives. I'd been working on it for over half an hour. But the bowl of filling just didn't smell right. It was missing that essential savory aroma. My heart was pounding with anxiety, like a frantic fly trapped in a jar, buzzing around with no way out. Without thinking, she called out toward the living room, "Mom, can you come take a look at this filling? Something's off with the flavor." The moment the words left her mouth, she froze. It suddenly dawned on her that I was still lying in a hospital bed. She roughly raised her sleeve, wiping away tears from the corner of her eyes, then grabbed her chopsticks and resumed stirring the filling in the bowl. But the tears only came faster, falling one by one into the filling. Lin Xiao thought to herself, I was the one who taught her how to make dumplings, step by step. In the old days, when it was just the two of us celebrating the new year, we didn't need to make too many dumplings. She would always pull up a little stool and sit beside me, watching my fingers fly as I wrapped them. Sometimes she'd get so caught up in watching that she'd want to try her hand at it too. I would just smile and tell her to go wash her hands, then patiently show her how to roll out the dough and wrap the dumplings. Lin Xiao picked up a perfectly round dumpling wrapper, scooped some filling onto it, and deftly sealed it shut. In a daze, she heard my voice again, warm with praise. Our Xiao Xiao is just wonderful. Look how perfectly she wraps them. It wasn't just about making dumplings, her approach to life, her favorite flavors, the tone of her voice, even the way she furrowed her brow, she carried so much of me within her. My thoughts drifted further. 10 years ago, when she lay in a hospital bed desperately needing a kidney transplant, I didn't hesitate to get tested as a match. During those days waiting for the results, I took a long-distance bus back to my hometown alone. I burned paper offerings for my ancestors, pleading with them over and over to let my kidney save my daughter. When the news of the successful match came through, tears streamed down my face as I kept repeating over and over, "That's just wonderful, absolutely wonderful." With that thought, Lin Xiao could no longer hold herself up. She slid to the floor and broke into uncontrollable sobs. Zhang Haifeng returned from outside, heard some noise coming from the kitchen, and hurried over to check it out. "Xiao Xiao, what's wrong? Get up." Lin Xiao looked up, grabbing his arm as if it were her last lifeline. "Haifeng, how could I even think that?" At the hospital this afternoon, seeing Mom like that, I actually found myself wondering if I should tell her we should stop the treatment and just go home. And when Auntie told Mom to give up, I felt a sense of relief deep down. What kind of daughter am I? I'm a monster. Her voice grew more agitated as she spoke, tears flowing freely and impossible to wipe away. "Haifeng, you're a good man. I can't keep dragging you down like this. Once my mother is discharged from the hospital this time, let's go and finalize the paperwork. I have to save my mom. She's my mother. And she ended up like this because of me." Zhang Haifeng watched her crumbling before him, his lips parted slightly, as if he wanted to say something. But before he could say anything, a sharp ringing sound suddenly broke the silence. The hospital's number flashed on the screen, and Lin Xiao pressed answer with trembling hands. "Is this MS? Lin Xiao, come to the hospital right away. Something's happened to your mother." The phone slipped from his hand with a sharp snap, landing hard on the ground alongside the wrapped dumpling. 06 Fate has a cruel sense of humor. Some people fight tooth and nail just to stay alive, only to be handed a death sentence by a single medical diagnosis. Here's the translation. Even someone like me, who was dead set on ending my life, was dragged back into the world by modern medicine. They managed to save me, but I remained unconscious. My daughter kept vigil by my bedside, day and night, talking to me constantly. "Mom, do you remember in 3rd grade, when you took me to the town to see the lantern festival? I was desperate for that rabbit lantern, so you stayed up all night making one for me. It was even prettier than the ones for sale. Mom, I had my prenatal checkup yesterday. The doctor says he's perfectly healthy. Don't you want to meet him?" Sometimes her voice would grow thick with nasal tones and choked with sobs. "Mom, wake up, look at me. I just want you to live. I just want you alive." The doctor came by several times, his tone heavy and helpless. He said to his daughter and son-in-law, "The patient's bodily functions have severely declined, and continuing treatment now is essentially just prolonging their suffering, unless a matching kidney can be found for a transplant. But the surgery and anti-rejection medication costs, before and after, will be at least 700,000. The figure of 700,000 landed on everyone's hearts like a boulder. Haifeng stood by the bedside, silent for a long time. I heard him take a deep breath, then say, "Help, I sold the car." My cousin and my sister-in-law came by again. This time, instead of bringing fruit baskets, they pressed varying amounts of cash into Xiaxia's hands. My sister-in-law rushed to my bedside and grasped my hand tightly. "Shuhua, I was foolish back then. Please don't hold it against me. You have to keep living." These voices warm, painful, resolute, kept washing over my consciousness. Like waves, but I'm just too exhausted. Every moment I continue to live feels like a fresh act of exploitation, against my daughter, against this family. I couldn't tell how long I'd slept, but when I opened my eyes, there was my daughter's tired yet delighted face. Mom, you're awake. Doctor, doctor, my mom's awake. I looked at my daughter's bloodshot eyes, the blisters forming at the corners of her mouth from anxiety, and the signs of everyone's frantic efforts for me in the hospital room. I moved my parched lips. Shao, just give up. Mom, I'm not getting treatment anymore. Mom, let's go home. 7. The moment the words left my mouth, the noisy hospital room fell silent. My daughter's crying abruptly stopped as she stared at me in disbelief. Mom, what nonsense are you talking about? We've made it through 10 years. How can you give up now? My heart felt like it was being wrenched apart. 700,000. For a family like ours, that's an astronomical sum. Even if we could raise the money, where would we find a donor kidney? And how many more years would we have to wait? How could I possibly let Shao, heavy with child, keep running herself ragged for my sake? Shao, I'm exhausted, and you've been exhausted these past 10 years, too. Let's just call it quits, her daughter practically shouted. No, I won't allow it. The son-in-law also took a deep breath and walked to the bedside. Mom, I was wrong to say those awful things earlier. Please don't take them to heart. Our family just can't do without you. Hearing their words, my heart felt as if it were being roasted over a fire. How could I not want to live? How could I not want to see my grandson be born? But reality is too heavy, so heavy it takes my breath away. Just as we were at a stalemate, my sister-in-law showed up again. Shuhua, Shao, my daughter is working at a newspaper office now. She said she wanted to write about your situation and publish it in the newspaper. Maybe someone kind would step in to help. My instinct was to refuse. In all my life, no matter how hard things got, I never begged from the outside world, but seeing Xiaoxiao's haggard face, the refusal died on my lips. The report was released in the early hours of the following day. None of us expected the article to cause such a stir. At 6 in the morning, my daughter's phone was already buzzing nonstop. At first, there were encouraging text messages from unknown numbers, followed by a call from the hospital's publicity department saying many citizens wanted to make donations. By 9 o'clock in the morning, the amount raised on the online donation platform had already surpassed 100,000 yuan. The daughter stared in disbelief at the numbers flickering on the screen, tears streaming uncontrollably down her face. Mom, look, there are so many kind people. There's hope for us now. I looked at those unfamiliar names and heartfelt messages, and my eyes welled up. Yet, behind every sunshine, there's always a shadow. Amidst countless messages of blessing and encouragement, there were also innumerable doubts. Another sob story trying to scam donations. We've heard too many of these lately. Donate a kidney and end up with uremia. What are the odds of that? Who knows if it's made up? The platform should investigate this thoroughly. Her daughter's finger hovered over the screen. Trembling slightly, she quickly closed the page, forcing a smile as she said to me, Mom, don't pay any attention to those people. They're all talking nonsense. But I knew those words were piercing her heart like needles. That night, I heard her softly crying in the hallway, my son-in-law comforting her. Don't cry. It's not worth getting upset over people like that. As long as our conscience is clear, that's all that matters. In that moment, I wanted to give up all over again. I couldn't bear the thought of my child enduring this criticism and pressure because of me. Just then, the attending physician brought some genuinely good news. The match was successful. We've found a kidney that's a perfect fit. The family of a young man who was declared brain dead after an accident saw the story and, in their grief, came forward to offer a donation. They said they hope this mother can see the world for their child. The ward was deathly quiet. The daughter was the first to react. She clapped a hand over her mouth, tears welling up uncontrollably, but they were tears of joy. The son-in-law's eyes welled up too, gripping Xiaoxiao's hand tightly. 08 The surgery is scheduled for a week from now. This week has been an emotional roller coaster for me. On one hand, there was a longing for a new life. On the other, a deep guilt toward that unfamiliar young man and his family. My daughter seemed to sense what I was thinking. She took my hand and said, Mom, we have to live well, together with his share too. That's the only way we won't betray their intentions. The surgery a week later went very well. During those days in the ICU, every normal reading on the monitors brought tears of joy to their daughter and son-in-law waiting anxiously outside. As I was wheeled back into the general ward, my daughter rushed to the bedside, laughing through her tears. Mom, that's wonderful, truly wonderful. 2 months later, just before the new year, I was finally discharged from the hospital. The sunlight was brilliant that day. Stepping out of the hospital doors and breathing in the fresh air I'd missed for so long, I was struck by a profound sense of having lived a lifetime in between. After the new year passed, another spring arrived. In the late spring, my daughter gave birth to a baby girl. She weighed 6 pounds and 8 ounces, and her cries were remarkably strong and clear. When I first took the swaddled bundle from the nurse's arms, my own hands trembled slightly. The little one had her eyes closed, her tiny fists clenched tight. I studied her delicate features closely. The shape of her eyes and brows was the very image of my daughter when she was a baby. We named her Nyen Nyen, a name that carries our wish for her to always remember all the love and kindness she has received. Our son-in-law worked even harder, and a few years later, he was promoted and received a raise. We moved into a slightly larger home where sunlight now fills the entire living room. Our daughter also returned to the workforce, taking on a job she enjoys that is relatively low stress, and the brightness returned to her smile. Life seemed to be heading in a positive direction. The side effects of the anti-rejection medication began to surface. My immune system is significantly weaker than most people's. Even a common cold could escalate into pneumonia. Perhaps my past suicide attempt had frightened my daughter. She often wakes from dreams at midnight, comes to my room, holds me, and says, "Mom, you have to take your medicine properly and keep living. I can't lose you." And Nyen Nyen can't lose her grandma either. 09 But the time fate lent me was always meant to have an end. In the spring of the 8th year, during a routine checkup, the doctor discovered that the function of the new kidney had begun an irreversible decline. He explained that this was the inevitable result of long-term use of anti-rejection medication and the body's natural aging process, not a failure of the surgery itself. Unexpectedly, we all accepted this news with a sense of calm. These 8 extra years, watching Nyen Nyen grow from an infant into a lively and lovely elementary school student, and seeing my daughter and son-in-law's lives settle onto a steady course, were already a generous gift from fate. We dare not ask for anything more. I chose to spend my final days at home. My daughter and her husband insisted I take the master bedroom. It's spacious, filled with sunlight, and from the window, I can see the very path Nyen Nyen takes home from school. My body grows weaker day by day, yet my mind remains remarkably at peace. My daughter took her annual leave to care for me at home, just as I once cared for her. No matter how busy my son-in-law is at work, he always comes home on time and prepares various easily digestible meals for me. The first thing Nyen Nyen does after school is run to my bedside. She shows me her drawings and the little red stars she earned, telling me all about her day at school in her clear, bright voice. One day, Nyen Nyen suddenly asked very seriously, "Grandma, where do people go after they die?" Xiaoxiao's face instantly changed, and just as she was about to intervene, I gently shook my head and said to Nyen Nyen with a smile, "They become stars in the sky, watching over the people they love." Nyen Nyen asked with wide eyes, "Will you become the brightest one?" I patted her head. "She will. Grandma will always watch Nyen Nyen grow up." She nodded, not fully understanding, and nestled closer to me. In that moment, I felt my life was complete. On an autumn afternoon, warm sunlight streamed across the bedsheet. I could feel life slowly draining from my body, my breaths growing shallow, my vision beginning to blur. My daughter seemed to sense it. She gripped my hand tightly, pressed her face against the back of it, and her warm tears soaked into my skin. Her son-in-law stood behind her, eyes rimmed red, with one hand resting on her shoulder. Her voice trembled with suppressed tears, yet she struggled to keep it steady. "Mom, don't be afraid, we're all here. Nyen Nyen will be out of school soon." I tried hard to smile at her, to touch her head one last time, but I couldn't muster the strength to raise my hand. I slowly let my gaze linger over each of their faces, trying to memorize their looks. In a daze, I saw my late wife. He remains, in my memory, as young and spirited as ever, wearing that old, faded work uniform, a gentle smile on his face. "Xu Hua, you've worked hard. I'm here to take you home." In that moment, all worries and weariness melted away. I saw the strength in how my daughter and son-in-law supported each other. I saw the first light of life shining in Nyen Nyen's eyes. I took one last look at the golden sunset outside the window, then slowly closed my eyes. My daughter felt my hand gradually losing its warmth. She leaned down, placed a final kiss on my forehead, and whispered, "I love you, Mom." Outside the window, a golden ginkgo leaf twirled down from its branch and settled softly onto the earth. Falling leaves returned to their roots. The end. Story 2. I'm 4 months pregnant, and I found a condom wrapper in my husband's car. The phone calls he secretly answered behind my back, the sudden overtime work at the company on weekends. Everything now seems to have its clues. Looking at the surveillance video, my face was filled with self-mockery. It turned out that his image as a good man was all an act. In the early morning, I felt a tightening in my stomach and immediately woke up. I sat up straight, and the feeling in my stomach gradually subsided. Looking at my husband who was sleeping soundly beside me, I touched my slightly protruding belly, and my heart was filled with sweetness. Ding dong. Suddenly, there was a sound of a mobile phone notification ringing outside. I frowned slightly, reached out and turned on the bedside lamp. Both of our mobile phones were placed on the bedside table, and there was no third person in the house. How could there be a mobile phone ringing in the living room? An inexplicable feeling welled up in my heart. I got up and slowly walked into the living room, and followed the sound to find my husband's hanging coat. Sure enough, from the pocket of the coat, I found another mobile phone. I glanced at my husband who was still sleeping in the room, and immediately started trying to unlock it. However, neither my birthday nor my husband's birthday was the correct password. He had always used my birthday as the password for his phone, and before he met me, he used his own birthday. Looking at the remaining 3 attempts, I put the phone down and went back to bed to sleep. When I woke up in the morning, my husband had already gotten up and started making breakfast for me. Due to my pregnancy, my diet was strictly regulated, and he always made it before going to work. He would also come home during the 1.5-hour lunch break to cook for me. Originally, this was a very happy thing, but the incident with the mobile phone last night had put a knot in my heart. Man, if you're awake, come and have breakfast. Yang Ruifeng, who had finished making breakfast, came out of the kitchen and called out to me softly. I took a deep breath, smiled at him, and got up to wash up. After having breakfast, my husband put on his coat and left. I lay back on the bed again, and various thoughts about this mobile phone kept popping up in my mind. Why didn't Yang Ruifeng tell me about this mobile phone? Should I bring it up and ask him directly? After struggling for a long time, I still couldn't come to a conclusion, so I simply started scrolling through videos. At noon, Yang Ruifeng came back to cook for me. Ding dong. At this time, I heard the sound of a mobile phone ringing. It was my husband's phone placed on the dining table. Honey, there's a message on your phone. Hearing my voice, Yang Ruifeng came out of the kitchen. After looking at the message, a smile appeared on his face. It's from Shanhua. She said she wants to come to our place for the Mid-Autumn Festival this year. Shanhua is my younger sister, Zhang Xinhua. She is already in her junior year of college. My parents passed away early, and now she is my only relative. Hearing that it was a message from my sister, I didn't pay much attention and just replied, let her come if she wants. Anyway, she comes here quite often. Why is she being so polite this time? Shanhua's university is only a little over 10 kilometers away from my home. On weekends, when she doesn't want to stay in the dormitory, she comes to stay at my place. My house has 3 bedrooms and 2 living rooms, and I directly gave 1 room to her. Okay, Yang Ruifeng nodded, replied with a smile, and then brought the lunch to the table. As I was eating, I always had an urge to say something, but I suppressed it firmly. In the end, I decided to keep quiet and pretend not to know. Everyone has their own privacy, right? Anyway, as long as he loves me, that's enough. Thinking of this, I seemed to have convinced myself, and the pressure in my heart suddenly disappeared. Yang Ruifeng returned to the company to work, and I leaned on the chair and decided to go out and buy something. The Mid-Autumn Festival was in 3 days, and I finally went out after not going out for nearly 2 weeks. This time, I bought a lot of things that Shanhua and Ruifeng like to eat in the supermarket. I'm going to cook by myself for the Mid-Autumn Festival this year. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, the Mid-Autumn Festival arrived. In the early morning of that day, Yang Ruifeng was off work, and Shanhua was also picked up from school by him. However, the journey that usually takes about 40 minutes took more than an hour and a half this time. Why did it take so long to get here? Was there a traffic jam on the road? I asked my question. After all, the time this time was much longer. Yeah, sis, it was really congested. We almost crashed into another car. Fortunately, brother-in-law braked in time. Yang Ruifeng didn't say anything, and Shanhua took over my words and started telling me about it. I smiled when I heard it and reminded Yang Ruifeng to pay attention to safety while driving and not to get angry. I didn't take this matter to heart. In the evening, after having dinner, Shanhua dragged me and Yang Ruifeng to play games. After playing for a while, I lost interest in the game. I greeted them and went straight back to my room. However, the 2 of them seemed to be completely engrossed in the game and were shouting and yelling on the sofa in the living room. You two, keep it down a bit. I said something and closed the door conveniently. After about an hour, I got up to go to the bathroom. The moment I opened the door, I only heard some movement. In an instant, I saw Yang Ruifeng's hand quickly retract. What are you two doing? Aren't you playing games anymore? I walked towards the bathroom and took a look at the 2 of them. Shanhua's face was slightly red, and she was holding her phone and fiddling with it with her head down. Yang Ruifeng reached out to pick up the water cup. We're not playing anymore. We lost consecutively. It's boring. Hearing my words, Yang Ruifeng replied without even looking up. I looked at the two of them suspiciously. I didn't say anything more and went into the bathroom. At noon the next day, Shanua was going back to school after having lunch. Sis, ask brother-in-law to send me back. I don't want to take a taxi. I was sitting on the sofa watching TV, and Shanua came over and acted coquettishly with me. No problem, honey, go and send her off. I didn't think much about it. After the two of them went out, I turned off the TV. What were they two doing last night? Thinking back to the moment I went out last night, I always felt something was wrong. As I was thinking, I somehow walked to the balcony and looked down. My family lives on the 5th floor, and the parking space is right downstairs. Soon, the figures of the two of them came out from the unit door. However, at that moment, I was stunned. The two of them were walking arm in arm like a couple. My heart trembled, and I kept comforting myself that I had seen it wrong. The car started, and I turned to look at the coat rack. This time, my husband didn't wear his coat. I quickly took out the other mobile phone from it. I took a deep breath and entered Shanua's birthday. It was unlocked. I stared at the unlocked phone in disbelief. The applications in it were very simple. Just a WeChat and a short video app. I opened WeChat, and there was only one friend in it. That playful avatar was exactly Shanua's. However, there were no chat records. I laughed. Their actions and the current mobile phone situation all told me the secret. Between the two of them even, I suspected that the traffic jam yesterday was not right. I flipped through the phone back and forth, but there was no other useful information in it. I put the phone back again, and my heart seemed to have been stabbed, hurting extremely. After more than an hour, my husband finally came back. Why did it take so long again? Was there still a traffic jam? When I saw Yang Ruifeng come back, I barely forced a smile. Yeah, after all, it's a festival, and it's the last day of the school holiday. It's too easy to get congested. Hearing my question, Yang Ruifeng's answer was flawless. It was as if he had expected that I would ask this question and had prepared the words in advance. I nodded and didn't ask any more questions. Suddenly, I had an idea and turned to look at Yang Ruifeng. Honey, I want to go out for a stroll. Since you're off work today, let's go and pray at the foot of Tianfu Mountain. Tianfu Mountain is a famous scenic spot near my home, only about 14 or 15 kilometers away from my home. When he heard that I wanted to go out, Yang Ruifeng was taken aback for a moment. Sure, then you pack up, and I'll pack up too. We'll set off soon. Yang Ruifeng didn't refuse. After being stunned for a moment, he smiled at me and agreed to my decision. I smiled brightly and went back to the bedroom to change my clothes. Since he always picks up and drops off by car, could there be some secrets between the two of them in the car? Thinking of this, I couldn't help but speed up my movements. Soon, the two of us came to the car. Since I got pregnant, except for the monthly pregnancy checkups, I never went anywhere by car. This was the first time. As soon as I opened the car door, a fragrant smell wafted into my nostrils. I frowned slightly. This smell was very strong. The next second, a feeling of nausea welled up in my heart, and I immediately leaned against the car body and vomited. Yang Ruifeng quickly ran over to pat my back and handed me a piece of paper. Are you okay? It's okay. I just didn't get used to the air freshener in the car all of a sudden. Why is the smell so strong? It's not that strong. It's the same as before. Maybe it's because you haven't smelled it for a long time. In response to my words, Yang Ruifeng gave a standard answer. I asked him to open the window for ventilation, and then I closed the door of the passenger seat and went straight to sit in the back row. Man, why don't you sit in the passenger seat? Seeing me sit in the back row, Yang Ruifeng looked back at me in surprise, and his face looked a bit unnatural. I don't want to fasten the seatbelt in the front row. It's too tight and uncomfortable. I had already thought of a reason. When he heard me say this, he didn't say anything more. The car started, and we set off on the way to Tianfu Mountain. There weren't many vehicles on the road, and there was no traffic jam as Yang Ruifeng had said. I didn't say anything either. I kept staring at my phone, and the image of him and Shanua snuggling together kept popping up in my mind. There must be something in the car. I started to search. Seeing this, Yang Ruifeng quickly asked, "What are you looking for?" I had an idea and immediately said, "I smell a strange smell. It's not the smell of the air freshener. It seems that something has gone bad in the car. You drive, and I'll just look for it." As soon as I said this, Yang Ruifeng fell silent. I rummaged around for a long time, but didn't find anything. Suddenly, the car braked sharply. My phone slipped out of my hand and rolled under the driver's seat. Man, are you okay? The person in front braked suddenly. My head also hit the back of the passenger seat in front, but it wasn't a big deal. It's okay, you drive carefully. As I said this, I started to pick up my phone. However, as soon as I reached in, I touched something that looked like an oily package. I frowned tightly and took it out at once. The moment I saw This thing, my mood plummeted. It was written on the package ultra-thin style, condom. This was a condom wrapper. In an instant, I felt my head rush with blood, and a buzzing sound rushed straight to my eardrums. However, I forced it down and silently stuffed the wrapper into my pocket, and I took a photo to record it. At this moment, I was already certain that he had definitely cheated. The person he cheated with might even be my own younger sister. This was the only blood relative I had in this world, but she stabbed me in the back. Thinking of this, my tears couldn't be controlled and flowed down. Yang Ruifeng noticed my unusual behavior. What's wrong, man? Why are you crying? His tone was full of concern, but I felt disgusted. This two-faced guy. It's okay. I came across a video and was a bit touched. I couldn't control my emotions. I found an excuse to prevaricate. Yang Ruifeng didn't notice anything and continued driving. In the afternoon when we were praying, I knelt on the ground and prayed for my unborn child. I'm sorry, my unborn child. It's mom who's sorry for you in this life. In the next life, be born into a good family. I had already made up my mind that as soon as I got enough evidence, I would have an abortion. After coming back from Tianfu Mountain, Yang Ruifeng cooked a lot of delicious food. He said that since we went out, we needed to replenish our energy. However, I didn't have any interest in eating at all. I took a few bites and then pretended to vomit and went back to my room. Yang Ruifeng seemed to notice my abnormality. He brought a glass of warm water and a piece of orange candy and came over. Man, if you don't feel well, do you want to eat a piece of candy to feel better? I curled up on the bed and ignored him. Ding dong. At this time, his phone rang. Yang Ruifeng took a look at it. He bent down and said to me, Man, there's a sudden loophole in the company project, and the boss asked me to go back and deal with it. I turned around. Before I could say anything, he had already turned and left the bedroom. Hee. I didn't believe that there was a problem with their company project. If it were before, I would have believed it. He left wearing his coat. I turned and went into Shanua's room. If the person he cheated with was Shanua, there would definitely be some clues in the room. I opened the door, and the room was very clean and tidy. There were several dolls on the table, and there was also a big doll on the bed. I started to rummage around. Soon, when I picked up the big doll on the bed, an abnormal sound reached my ears. I unzipped the zipper on the back of the doll. There were actually condoms inside. I quickly took out the wrapper I found in the car. It matched. The wrappers were exactly the same. There was absolutely no way such a coincidence could happen. The person Yang Ruifeng cheated with was my own younger sister. I plopped down on the ground. It took me more than 10 minutes to calm down before I got up and started to tidy up the traces of my rummaging. I sat on the bed and started to analyze the current situation. I needed more evidence. At the very least, I had to get their chat records. After 2 hours, Yang Ruifeng came back. As soon as he came back, he was about to go to the bathroom. Honey, I called out to him because I caught a glimpse of a reddish hickey on his neck. Yang Ruifeng turned around with a guilty conscience and forced a smile. Man, I need to use the bathroom. I'm bursting. I smiled faintly, took out my phone, and took a photo of him before he could react. Go ahead. The moment I took the photo, I saw panic on his face. What are you doing? I didn't answer and turned back to the room. Yang Ruifeng quickly rushed into the bathroom. I guessed that he would surely notice the hickey and thus understand why I took the photo, but I didn't want to expose him just yet. I wanted to catch them in the act. Man. Why did you take that photo just now? Yang Ruifeng came back to the room and asked me with a seemingly calm expression, what's going on with your neck? I squinted my eyes and looked solemn. My neck. I was bitten by a mosquito today. You know I have type O blood, and I'm prone to getting bitten by mosquitoes. Seeing my interrogating look, he smiled unhurriedly. I admired his calmness very much. It would be very easy for me to expose him, but I couldn't break off the relationship with him yet. Oh, I thought you couldn't hold it in and went out to fool around behind my back. I gave him a disdainful look and smiled again. Yang Ruifeng then sat down beside me and clasped my shoulders with both hands. My man is so beautiful and is working so hard to carry our little baby. How could I do such a heartless thing? I felt a bit disgusted but forced a smile to respond to him. At night, I couldn't fall asleep at all. My mind was filled with the image of the two of them walking arm in arm. Thinking of this, I got up and went to the living room. After making sure that Yang Ruifeng wasn't awake, I took out that other mobile phone from the inner pocket of his coat again. After unlocking it, I opened WeChat. The chat records hadn't been deleted. Surprised, I immediately started reading them. You little vixen, look at what you've done. You can't give me hickeys anymore in the future. Your sister almost found out. Got it. Tongue out emoji. Honey, let's try it at home next time. Just thinking about it is exciting. Are you crazy? Come on, just this weekend, it'll be so exciting. Okay, then let's give it a try. I really can't resist you, you little vixen. After reading it, my face darkened terribly. Their explicit words completely shattered my heart. Zhang Xinhua, Yang Ruifeng, how lustful are you two? I put the phone back, went into the bathroom to wash my face, and then went back to bed. Such a bold plan was also an opportunity for me to gather evidence. Thinking of this, I fell asleep peacefully. The next day, I did a major thing, that was to buy 2 pinhole cameras. While Yang Ruifeng was at work, I installed one in the kitchen and one in Xiaonua's bedroom. I adjusted the angles, just waiting for the two of them to put on a big show for me on the weekend. Time flew by. I treated Yang Ruifeng as usual this week. Similarly, he didn't notice any abnormality in me. The weekend arrived. Ding dong, my phone received a message. This time, Zhang Xinhua didn't send a message to Yang Ruifeng but to me. Sis, I'm coming. It was only a little past 9 in the morning. Zhang Xinhua, you really can't wait. Okay, come on, don't be too late, or no one will wait for you to have lunch. I replied as normal and thought to myself how they would try to send me away. At 10:35, the doorbell rang. Zhang Xinhua swaggered in. As soon as she came in, she ran over and patted me. Sis, what are we having for lunch today? I didn't eat anything last night and have been waiting for this meal at noon. I turned around and gave her a disdainful look. I don't know either. You can ask your brother-in-law, he's busy in the kitchen. I don't know why, but Zhang Xinhua wouldn't have asked me this before. Brother-in-law, hearing me say that, she let out a coquettish cry and ran into the kitchen. Hee. She's learned to avoid suspicion now. Normally, when Yang Ruifeng is cooking, I don't go into the kitchen, but today is special. Weren't the two of them going to give it a try? And since they were alone, they would surely be more unrestrained, and that would all be evidence for me. I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and immediately opened the surveillance app on my phone. I brought up the live feed from the kitchen. As soon as I opened it, I saw Zhang Xinhua hugging Yang Ruifeng from behind. I frowned tightly and took screenshots one after another. I would print out these photos. I would also save the surveillance video. These were all solid pieces of evidence. Xiaonua, take it easy, your sister is still in the bedroom. The pinhole cameras were bought at a high price. Although they were small, the sound and picture quality were high definition. I put on my earphones and started listening to what the two of them were saying. It's okay, she won't come into the kitchen. Honey, have you thought about how to send my sister away? The word honey made me clench my fists. You bitch, how could Zhang Xinhua be so cheap? You little vixen, I really can't do anything about you. If your sister sees or hears this, we're both done for. Yang Ruifeng still had some sense and whispered to Zhang Xinhua. I sneered coldly. At this moment, my heart was already dead. And it didn't matter what they did. It's okay, she just went to the bathroom. We'll hear her if she comes out. As soon as Zhang Xinhua finished speaking, Yang Ruifeng suddenly turned around and hugged her and started kissing her. I took a deep breath and continued taking screenshots. However, it was time for me to go out. The normal time for using the bathroom had passed. If I didn't go out now, it would be suspicious, but I didn't turn off the surveillance feed. The moment I opened the door, the two of them in the picture were like startled birds at the sound of a bowstring. They immediately separated like lightning. I closed the surveillance feed and started walking towards the kitchen. Honey, what are we having for lunch today? I asked as I walked, and Yang Ruifeng immediately responded, we're having corn and spare rib soup. I also made scallion pancakes, stir-fried baby cabbage, and a cold tofu dish. I have to say that Yang Ruifeng has good cooking skills and he was really good to the baby. It was just that his feelings for me were fake. I smiled and replied okay, then walked into the kitchen. Zhang Xinhua was washing the baby cabbage. Oh, you actually know how to do some work. It's really not easy, sis. I'm not here just to eat for free. Hearing me say that, Zhang Xinhua looked up and giggled. I didn't respond and turned to leave. After having lunch at noon, I lay on the sofa watching TV. Yang Ruifeng sat beside me, and Zhang Xinhua went back to her room. But at this moment, Yang Ruifeng kept looking at his phone and replying to messages. I guessed that Zhang Xinhua, who was in the room, was getting a bit anxious. The two of them probably couldn't figure out a way to send me out. Since you can't think of a way, then I'll create such a situation for you. Oh, I just remembered that I haven't picked up a package yet. I picked up my phone, took a look at it, and pretended to exclaim in surprise. Yang Ruifeng looked up. Let me go and get it. He was about to stand up as he said this, but I definitely couldn't let him go. A two-person action movie can't be without the male lead. If you go, who will act for me? No need, I'll go this time. It's a package from STO Express, at the courier station on the south side of the road. I haven't been out for almost a week. I can just go out for a stroll. You can rest at home. I quickly refused his offer and then got up to change my clothes, showing that I didn't need his help. However, how could Yang Ruifeng miss such a good opportunity? He definitely wouldn't refuse my offer. Oh, is that so? Okay then, is the package heavy? Come on, I can handle it on my own, just wait and see. By the way, I'll go to the supermarket downstairs and buy some fruits. After saying that, I opened the door and went downstairs. After making sure that they couldn't see the content of my phone, I immediately opened the surveillance feed. Sure enough, the two of them were already hugging in Zhang Xinnua's room. In the picture, the two of them were passionately kissing, and Yang Ruifeng was groping around with great pleasure. I watched as I walked, somewhat interested, but I'm not a pervert either. After they took off their clothes, I closed the feed anyway. The surveillance video would be saved to the cloud storage. No one could delete it without my permission. Even if the cameras were discovered and destroyed, it would be too late even without watching the rest of the scene. I could imagine how crazy the two of them were. The time I was out was limited, and they had to finish quickly based on Yang Ruifeng's usual speed. I thought I'd give them 15 minutes. I went to buy some fruits. The package, there wasn't any. That was just an excuse. I checked the time. It was exactly 15 minutes. I opened the surveillance feed. The two of them had already finished. Now they were hugging each other and enjoying the cozy moment. I took the elevator to my doorstep and sent Yang Ruifeng a message saying that I didn't have my keys. He replied with a "wait a moment, I'm in the bathroom." Then, in the surveillance feed, I saw Yang Ruifeng running out of Zhang Xinua's room in a panic. I wasn't in the living room when he came out, but after I entered the door, I heard the sound of water flushing in the toilet. He was quite cautious and even went to flush the toilet on purpose. I put the fruits down and went back to my room and lay down. Now that I had completely grasped the evidence, I thought it was time to confront them. On Monday, Yang Ruifeng made breakfast and then went to work. I contacted the lawyer. I had arranged and packaged all the photos, videos, and the condom wrapper together. These were all evidence for the court, and they were also the guarantee to force Yang Ruifeng to leave the marriage with nothing. At noon, I went to the hospital. When Yang Ruifeng got home and found that I wasn't there, he immediately called me. "Just eat by yourself." I only said this after answering the phone, and then I directly turned off my phone. "Ma'am, are you sure you want to have an abortion? Does your husband know about it?" The doctor looked at my report in surprise. My various indicators in the report were extremely good, and the fetus was also very healthy. This was all thanks to Yang Ruifeng's careful care, but he wasn't taking care of me. "I'm sure I want to have an abortion. I don't have a husband," I replied coldly to the doctor and then lay down on the operating table with a sense of relief. 2 hours later, I was wheeled out of the operating room. The surgery was a success, the baby was aborted, and it didn't have a particularly big impact on me. It was just that I needed to take good care of myself during the postoperative recovery period. Otherwise, there might be some sequelae. The effect of the anesthesia hadn't worn off yet, and I fell asleep in the hospital ward. Man, no, why, my baby?" A series of exclamations rang in my ears, and a pair of big hands grabbed me and lifted me up. I felt a sharp pain in my abdomen. I opened my eyes, and Yang Ruifeng had actually found me. I didn't know how he found me, but he was too late. The baby was already gone. Why did you abort my baby, Zhang Xinman?" He was hysterical. This was the craziest I had ever seen him since I met him all these years. Cough. "Why, don't you know the reason?" My voice wasn't loud, but that sentence was like a knife stabbing straight into Yang Ruifeng's heart. "You, man, you know everything." Yang Ruifeng let go of his hand and stepped back, trembling all over. His eyes filled with tears. Hee, if you don't want others to know, you'd better not do it. Do you think what you did would go unnoticed? Hee, I'm not a fool. I shook my head and smiled miserably at him. At this moment, there was no color in my face. "It's impossible, you can't know, you're bluffing me." Hee. Yang Ruifeng suddenly stepped forward and grabbed my hand. "Bluffing you? Do you think I would have an abortion if I didn't have evidence? Here, let me show you what this is." As I said this, I picked up my phone and showed Yang Ruifeng the surveillance video from that day. When did you install this?" The moment he saw it, he let out a roar, snatched the phone from me, and smashed it with a bang. Hee, you don't have the evidence anymore, Zhang Xinman. "No, man, can we start over? I had an affair, and you aborted the baby. We're even now." Hearing Yang Ruifeng's almost crazy words, I closed my eyes and lay back on the bed. "I've already hired a lawyer, and the evidence has long been submitted. Give up on this idea." No. Yang Ruifeng seemed unable to accept it. He squatted on the ground with his hands on his head, shouting. At this moment, a doctor rushed in with 2 nurses. "What are you doing? This is a hospital. No loud noises are allowed here." The doctor frowned and shouted at Yang Ruifeng, but Yang Ruifeng, who was squatting on the ground, ignored him and continued shouting no, 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 Xiao Yang, go and call the security guards. Seeing this, the doctor immediately ordered the nurse beside him to call the security guards soon. Four security guards rushed in and carried Yang Ruifeng out. I finally got the long-awaited peace in the afternoon. The lawyer contacted me and came to the hospital to discuss the court session with me. He assured me that with such evidence, Yang Ruifeng had absolutely no chance of turning the case around. He would definitely leave the marriage with nothing. Not long after seeing off the lawyer, I received a court session notice on my phone. The time was set for a week later. I believed that Yang Ruifeng on the other side had also received the notice. At this time, Zhang Xinhua called me. Sis, it's my fault. I was wrong. Please don't divorce brother-in-law. I answered the phone, and Zhang Xinhua spoke with a crying voice, which was so pitiful. Shanhua, you're my only relative. Why did you betray me? I had long wanted to ask this question. Sis, I'm sorry. I was possessed by evil. I was wrong. Please don't divorce brother-in-law, Shanhua cried out. But unfortunately, my heart was already dead. It had been shattered by the two of them with their own hands. It's impossible. Things have already come to this point. There's no turning back. My voice was cold, and I was about to hang up the phone after saying that. No, sis. If you get a divorce, Yang Ruifeng is going to kill me. Before I could even finish my words, Shanhua on the other end of the phone let out a scream. Shut up, you bastard. Shanua's words were cut off before she could finish, and she was covered by something over her mouth. A series of MMPH sounds came through, accompanied by Yang Ruifeng's angry shout at the same time. At that moment, I felt that something was wrong. What was Yang Ruifeng going to do? Yang Ruifeng, what are you doing? What are you going to do to Shanhua? Although I was betrayed by Zhang Xinhua, that didn't mean she deserved to die. Combining Yang Ruifeng's actions with Zhang Xinhua's words, I felt that the situation was taking a bad turn. What am I doing? Zhang Xinman, you aborted my child and even had the doctor throw me out of the hospital. Do you think I'll just let it go? I'm telling you, it's all your sister. Zhang Xinhua seduced me. That's why all this happened. As long as you don't divorce me and promise to get back together with me, then I'll let her go. Otherwise, I'll take her life and make her be buried with my unborn child. In the phone call, Yang Ruifeng's voice was manic. After hearing his words, I realized that things had taken a wrong turn. This wasn't just about going to court for a divorce anymore. I finally understood why Shanhua took all the blame on herself. It turned out that she was being threatened by Yang Ruifeng. Yang Ruifeng, I advise you to let Shanhua go immediately. If we get a divorce, you can still live a normal life, but if you kidnap Shanhua, things won't be that simple. I started to persuade Yang Ruifeng. In my opinion, he wasn't a completely crazy person and there was a chance to talk him out of it. Man, you still care about me, you still love me, don't you? After hearing my words, he immediately burst into laughter. Yes, so can you let Shanhua go? I had no choice but to go along with his words to try my best to protect Zhang Xinhua's safety. Impossible, unless I receive a notice to cancel the court session. You'll never see this bitch again. My heart skipped a beat. Just as I was about to say something, Yang Ruifeng on the other end continued. Think about it carefully. Don't even think about calling the police. If you do, she will definitely be buried with my child. With that, the phone call ended. I was already weak after the abortion, and now I felt even worse, facing such a crazy Yang Ruifeng. I was at a loss for a moment, after putting down the phone and sitting there lost in thought. For more than 10 minutes I resolutely decided to call the police. I explained the situation to the police. An hour later, 3 plainclothes policemen came to my hospital room. After understanding the situation, the police immediately started to investigate Yang Ruifeng's location. At the same time, 2 plainclothes policemen were left to guard beside me. Once Yang Ruifeng found out that I had called the police, he might do something desperate if he was cornered. Lying in the hospital bed, I waited anxiously. The 2 plainclothes policemen were also keeping an eye on the messages on their phones at all times. After waiting for a full 3 hours, finally, one of the plainclothes policemen received a call. Wang Bing, bring Ms. Zhang to the rooftop of Guangmao building. The criminal is holding a hostage and insists on seeing her. My heart skipped a beat when I heard this. Then I got up with my weak body and followed the police. Soon, on the rooftop of Guangmao building, I saw Yang Ruifeng, who had changed a lot. I never expected that in such a short time. He had changed from a business white-collar look to a man with messy hair, a stubbly face, holding a long watermelon knife in his hand, his eyes bloodshot and his expression flustered. Zhang Xinman, bitch, you're also a bitch. I told you not to call the police, but you had to do it. When Yang Ruifeng saw me, his expression immediately became agitated. He waved the long knife in his hand. Yang Ruifeng, Don't be obsessed with your wrongdoings, put down the knife now, and Shanua and I can forgive you, I shouted with all my strength, and my body swayed, almost making me fall. The quick-eyed plainclothes policewoman beside me supported me. Ha 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 ha, forgive me, if you had forgiven me earlier, we wouldn't have ended up like this. Yang Ruifeng laughed maniacally. At the moment, his position was close to the edge of the rooftop. Once he went crazy, he could jump off the building with Zhang Xinhua at any time. It's not too late now, I can write a letter of understanding, and so can Shanua, I shouted at him again. At this moment, Zhang Xinua's condition was extremely poor. There were 3 or 4 bloodstains on her neck oozing blood, and her pale face made her look even weaker than me. Haha, haha, a letter of understanding. Can my child come back after you write it? Suddenly, he pointed the long knife in his hand at me from a distance, spitting as he spoke. Whoosh, while Yang Ruifeng was talking, something flew in from the left side in the distance and directly pierced into his neck. The next second, Yang Ruifeng collapsed to the ground, and Zhang Xinhua also collapsed and fainted. I was sent back to the hospital by the police, and Yang Ruifeng was taken away in handcuffs. On the way, the plainclothes policewoman told me that what had pierced into his body wasn't a bullet but an anesthesia bullet specially designed for criminals who held hostages. It could anesthetize a person instantly, and he would probably recover in about half a day. I let out a long sigh of relief. The matter was finally resolved. A week later, I had recovered a great deal. The court session proceeded as normal. However, this time, it was a double court trial. I lay back on the bed again, and various thoughts about that mobile phone kept popping up in my mind. This was also the first time I had seen Shanua in 7 days. Shanua sat beside me. She didn't even look at me once. Her eyes were fixed on her fingers on the table, looking as if she was feeling guilty, or perhaps indifferent. I wanted to say something. My throat moved slightly, but no sound came out at that moment. It seemed that the bond of kinship between us was about to break. I smiled with a sense of relief. It turned out that when I discovered the secret between her and Yang Ruifeng, the crack in our kinship had already appeared. With the emergence of various pieces of evidence later, the crack in our kinship grew wider and wider. She was a victim, a hostage who was kidnapped and held captive, but for me, she was the perpetrator. She was the one who destroyed my family. Thinking of this, I gave up the idea of talking to her. This was probably the last bit of sisterly affection between us. The judge banged the gavel, and the sentencing was over. All the crimes were proven to be established. Yang Ruifeng was sentenced to 3 years and 5 months in prison, and his political rights were deprived during that period. At the same time, due to the conclusive evidence of his infidelity, he was ordered to leave the marriage with nothing. All the property acquired during the marriage belonged to me. Moreover, the judge ruled that Yang Ruifeng, having lost his political rights, couldn't initiate a divorce from me, and we were directly and compulsorily divorced. I let out a long sigh of relief. Things finally calmed down. When I returned home again, I looked at the room that had originally belonged to us, and a sense of disgust welled up in my heart. I sold the house at a low price, packed all my belongings, and boarded a high-speed train to another city. Sitting in my seat, a ray of sunlight outside shone on me through the window. A slight warmth welled up in my heart. At this moment, the train stopped at a station, and a shy young man sat down beside me. He had a youthful face. When he saw me looking at him, the tips of his ears turned red. Involuntarily, I smiled. It turned out that this was the real life